Inside the Albert and Shirley Small Special Collections Library at the University of Virginia, there's a new exhibition. This collection comes from more than 600 portraits of African American citizens of Charlottesville, Albemarle, and Nelson counties, taken during the height of the Jim Crow era.
They're allowing us to see a different Central Virginia, to tell a different story about Central Virginia.
It's called Visions of Progress, Portraits of Dignity, Style, and Racial Uplift. It shows photos taken by photographers at the Holsinger studio from the 1890s to the 1920s. During that time, there were state laws enforcing racial segregation in Virginia. The Ku Klux Klan had local chapters. But John Edwin Mason, chief exhibition curator, says you don't see that when looking at these photos.
They were not defined by their oppression. They were not defined by Jim Crow. They were not defined by their occupations as cooks or as housekeepers or as janitors. They saw themselves living full, rich lives, and that's what they wanted to show in these portraits.
This exhibition includes around 100 portraits and the stories of the people in them.
And once you have a name, you can start doing research. So we're connecting people's personal life story to all kinds of local, national, and international history.
This work done with the help of research assistants like Mimi Reynolds.
This history is very close to Charlottesville and like where I live, because I feel like a lot of history is like happening somewhere else or like not very, it just doesn't seem like we're very in touch with it. So it's cool that like I'm living in a place where I'm learning it.
The history is so close by that Charlottesville natives are helping to identify people in these portraits and tell a more complete story. Edwina St. Rose has worked with the Daughters of Zion Cemetery, Charlottesville's historic African-American cemetery, doing genealogy work for more than 5 years and is extending her work to help the Holsinger Portrait Project. Some of the people in the portraits are buried in Daughters of Zion Cemetery.
It's a welcome addition to my life to be able to help with another project that's looking at the African American history in the Charlottesville area.
With the combination of native Charlottesvillians and documents like birth and death records, census records, military records, marriage certificates, and newspaper clippings, these people are given more than just a portrait, but a story.
When you look at the dignity that people had, when you look at their poise and their self-possession, and when you look at sometimes their panache and their style and their fashionability, they're telling us something about themselves really powerfully. It's silent, but we can see it, and we can learn to listen to these photographs too, because they're sending us a message from the past.
And some of these stories have ties to the present day and people still here in Charlottesville. Kathryn Young, CBS 19 News. Of the African American people featured in the Holsinger portraits, curator and professor John Edwin Mason said many moved away to seek opportunity and a better life.
In many cases, they left Central Virginia. This was part of the great migration of African Americans from the South to the cities of the South and to the cities of the North. So they went looking for opportunity, and in some cases they actually found it. In some cases they found the American dream.
But in other cases, they stayed in Central Virginia.
One of the most fun parts of this entire project has been meeting the descendants of people in the portraits.
One of those descendants is Detisa Brown Gathers. Through the Holsinger Portrait Project, she learned more about her own family history.
One of the genealogists asked me if I knew Eileen Buckner, and I said, no, I don't recall Eileen Buckner. And as she started looking a little deeper, she said, well, there's a marriage certificate for her and my grandfather, Tommy Rhodes. And come to find out, Tommy Rhodes and Eileen Buckner were married for a brief period of time. In my family, we just never knew.
And she's not the only native Charlottesvillian to have ancestors' portraits in the exhibit. Edwina St. Rose's great-uncle, Charles Brown, and grandfather, William L. Brown, were barbers at the University of Virginia, in a shop that now houses the White Spot on the University corner.
I'm always excited to see that photo being displayed because I like to make sure that history is told.
Brown Gathers, co-chair of the Descendants of Enslaved Communities at UVA, says it's important to connect people to their lineage.
It puts life to the pictures. It lets you see that we actually exist past those images. Descendants exist. And we want to make sure that we make the connections and help people understand more of who they are through this collection and let them understand that that collection is just real. That's all I can say. It's just real, and it's real people.
Brown Gathers said she was floored by the display.
It's a place of honor. I felt that the ancestors were honored in that space.
But she is looking forward to bringing the collection into the community, like in churches and senior centers, to see if anyone else can be identified, and there are plans for that.
We have a plan for the portraits, and then that plan involves taking the portraits permanently out of UVA and into the community, but I can't tell you more than that right now.
Allowing people to connect with their ancestors in the same way Brown Gathers and St. Rose have.
This collection is not just about my connection and what I could find. What I hope when people see that, yes, my family, I can see them in these images and I can see these pieces, I want me to be plural. Others in the community that relate to this project or that don't even know they're related to this project because they just haven't started the research. So that me is very plural, and it's more about making sure that you get there as well. It's not about me.
I'm the only Brown family member living in Charlottesville at this present time. So, you know, when I leave, it's, you know, there's really no one here to tell the story. So I'm hoping that I can get it in writing so that it's not lost.
Stories which will now forever be a part of the archives at the University of Virginia. Kathryn Young, CBS 19 News.